Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Minds of Mortgage podcast. I am Kelly Yale and I'm delighted today to be joined by Kayla Kallander, who is a loan officer up in Fargo, North Dakota with First International Bank and Trust. She was one of my co-authors on the book Rethink Everything You Know About Being a Loan Officer, and she is also a podcast host. She has a podcast called It's Real, where she talks about all kinds of things that are going on in lending. She is a LinkedIn legend, and she also happens to be my friend. Kayla, thank you so much for joining us today.
Kelly, it's an honor. Why haven't we done this sooner? Because this is exciting and I'm pumped to be here alongside you on your podcast.
Can you imagine though, if we just had our own little podcast, we would have so much energy. People would just be like, what are they doing?
Didn't we, when we were together in Arizona, I'm pretty sure we said something about that. And it was like, oh, what? You guys have something together? What is this? We could be onto something.
It was at Housing Wire, and that we were going to go live on LinkedIn every day to give people the lowdown as what was going on at Housing Wire. And I think people need that kind of energy in the morning, to be really fair, because you and I are definitely we spring out of the nest and we are ready to go.
We're like a bright lightning on a dark day. It's like, look out, people. Energy. When we walk into a room, I think people are they can't help but look at us like, who are those girls? But we just love life and are electric, I guess.
I don't know if I've ever told you this or not, especially because you're a dog mom. Tell everybody about your dogs.
Oh, well, I have 4 pit bull mixes, rescues, and they are all from different rescues, and they are my babies, and they are my pride and joy, and I would spend $1 million on them a day if I could, which I almost do with their dog food and prescriptions. But yeah, I'm a huge dog rescue advocate, and we love our 4 pitties.
But I feel like you and I have dog energy, right? Oh. That's what it reminds me of. It's hey, you're home again? That's amazing. Let's talk. And we have this big energy that's so fun. So when I said that, I was like, we really do bring sort of that really excited energy. But talk to me a little bit about how you ended up as a loan officer.
Oh my gosh, the story will just, excite you because it's probably going to be what everyone else's is, and it's on accident, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't grow up with, riding my bike being I want to be a loan officer one day. But what happened, Kelly, maybe, I don't know if you actually know the backstory, but I was 15 years old and I wanted to work at my local Dairy Queen, but they weren't hiring. And I wanted to work with my friends, and I was bummed because they weren't hiring. But I heard on the intercom at school that they were hiring at a bank in town. And so I interviewed, I got the job, and I was thinking, I can file papers, I can do that. But they plot me down in front of the frontline CSR teller, access to everything, full cash drawer at the age of 15. And what's crazy is I kept that job for 11 years into college. And I just stayed in the banking, industry of, finance. And that led, having multiple jobs at that company. You just go up the ladder, wear different hats, and ended up in lending. And that's really how it happened, was just I kept working my way up to different paths and then got into lending, have worked for a few different mortgage companies, banks, and have been in the industry of mortgage itself for about 10 years.
I can totally see that for you. I can see that is I can't even if I lived in Fargo and I had to go to my bank, right? That would be so amazing to go in and your big smile. And I'm I feel like you give me 2 suckers instead of 1. I mean, I just feel like you would have really treated me right.
I was that girl that was shoving the dog biscuits in the drive-thru. Oh, do they want 7? Okay.
Yes. There's actually a bank that's right next to where we moved that's been abandoned for 3 years and they won't run it. And I so much want them to give it to me just so that I can send people treats through the little thing, right? I just want to rent it just so I can give people things through that little system. It's amazing.
I love that.
Well, speaking of Fargo and sort of, the difference between areas, obviously in the country, what makes lending different up in Fargo?
Good old Fargo. Well, I think a lot of people are very much seeing the growth of Fargo, which is Fargo, West Fargo. And a lot of people don't know Fargo's right on, there's a river that runs between Fargo and Moorhead, Minnesota. So Fargo has, a huge population as it is for, where we're at, but there's all these other cities around us, these, towns. And so what we're seeing a lot in Fargo is development, new construction. I mean, you could come here after 2 months. I mean, I'll be driving down one of the main roads and I'm like, where did that come from? We are continuously growing and evolving. So I tell you all that because that leads into people moving here because it's Fargo, it's safe, it's not as expensive as other cities. And we're seeing so much new construction developing, especially in West Fargo. And so that means a lot of, builders are benefiting, a lot of lenders, realtors. And I would say that's probably the biggest difference. Even going in across to Minnesota, they don't have as much new construction. And so we're seeing a lot of people come here and a lot of people, even first-time home buyers taking that step of home ownership through new construction because you can build something as a new homeowner being your first time even as well.
That's amazing. And in so many places, I'm assuming that the building season there has to be a little shorter because of the weather.
Good old Fargo, North Dakota weather. Yeah. So a lot of times builders can build all year depending on the builder, but they want to, break ground by this date or they want to have it done by this date so that they can focus on the interior at that point. So yeah, we also see a lot of escrow holdbacks, which means, hey, we need a fence and we need sod, but it's January. So what do? So we see a lot of holdback from the builder and then it's completed in the spring and summer. So tons of escrow holdbacks in our area too.
Well, even here in Charlotte, look, I mean, we barely have any weather at all, but there because of the way construction is, right? Yeah. Any number of reasons can really hold us back from being able to close. But I had to close on my house with no backyard because they couldn't get the sod in, and I was like, well, pretty sure we need to move in, so like we need to figure this out, however it's going to work. So,
yeah, especially when you've got dogs.
Yeah, especially when you have dogs, for sure. And you have you got a place on the lake. What lake is that?
So there's a lake. Minnesota is the land of 10,000 lakes. Lakes are everywhere. And so we have a lake place about 75 minutes away from Fargo, near Perham, Minnesota. And it's called Marion Lake. And it's a spring-fed lake. So it's clear. It's not really like dark and mucky. And it's quiet. It's so peaceful, which is what I need at the end of a crazy, chaotic mortgage week. So
yeah, that's great. That's absolutely great. Do you go up in the winter or do you just go in the summer?
Kelly, we go all the time. So like, it's beautiful in the winter. It's quiet. It's magical. It's majestic. We actually spent a week there over Christmas with the dogs and go on long walks. People ice fish a lot. I don't. You will not catch me ice fishing ever because it's just scares the living. You get it. But a lot of people will ice fish too. So there's a lot of activity, skiing and snowboarding, all of that around the area. But we love it in the fall and winter too. It's beautiful.
I had such a visual of you and I, like in our like bougie fluffy hats and our mittens, being like, can you get the worm on the hook? Against
right.
I'm not even sure.
You're having champagne and very Kardashian.
Yeah, very true. You and I share we share a lot of commonalities, but one of those things is our approach to social media and the way that we show up, even though, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I kind of can speak a little bit for you. It seems like the last few months have been so crazy busy. I have not been doing the job that I want to be doing. And I think we're all intentional sort of about our game plan and social, but talk to me about what inspired you to start really taking it seriously.
It happened when I was posting and I remember thinking like, am I wasting my time? This was back in like 2016. And I was in mortgage and I was closing loans and I was showing pictures of like the closings. Mm-hmm. And actually we were handing out Carson Wentz jerseys at closing at the bank I worked at. Yeah. His dad worked for us. Great thing. It was such a vibe, but I was posting and I remember thinking like, is this going anywhere? And I had a few haters, and not even really haters, I should say, but people like, oh, are you going to take another photo? Oh, Kayla's going to take a photo of you at closing. And I remember kind of getting in my head a little bit like, okay, am I that girl that's like, because it was like more of like a selfie? Is it like duck lips? And I didn't see it as that. I saw it as me sharing what I'm doing for a living and how I'm making an impact. And at a moment in time, back in 2016, I thought, like, I need to be done with this. And I was at a restaurant. Actually, it was a bar, but I'm just going to say a restaurant with my sister. And I had this guy come up to me and go, "Hey, you're the LinkedIn girl. You're the LinkedIn girl." He's like, "I don't need a mortgage, but I know that if I get one, I'm coming to you." And at that moment, Kelly, I'm like, okay, I'm taking 5 minutes to post something, not even, and somebody knows what I do. Think about the people that aren't coming up to me, but know what I do. And from there, I continued to take that platform into using more Facebook, then Instagram. Instagram, I started using more in like 21, thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know if I should post like on my personal story on my mortgage page. Like, I've gone through this whole evolution of like, do I show up as Kayla the lender? Do I show up as Kayla the fun, crazy Fargo, North Dakota girl who loves her dogs and volleyball? Like, what do I do? And it's been such a journey. But what really, to answer your question, made me start pouring into it more was the recognition I was getting for free, wasn't costing me money, to just tell people what I'm doing. That just because they're not liking and posting and commenting on it doesn't mean they're not seeing it. So that was a catalyst for me.
What's interesting to me is that what I so appreciate about you is that I could beg people all day long just to be in social, right? Just to show up as in some capacity, right? And then there's kind of the next level of people who will do something sometimes, but you embrace it in the same way that I do, which is like, I don't actually care if you think I look dumb. I don't care if I'm jumping on a trend. I don't care if I'm lip syncing a song. I don't care, because at the end of the day, like, this is me, and you getting to know me is important, right? People being able, I think that's what draws people into that energy, is that you're not afraid to be funny. You're not afraid to be smart. You're not afraid to jump on a trend and make it your own. And I think that is honestly super brave.
It is scary to put yourself out there. I mean, I made a reel the other day about the Fed rate cut. And I'm like, okay, someone's going to come at me at TikTok on TikTok. It happens. And it's like, would you take advice from someone doing, less than you, or someone who's not in your industry or understanding it? And I think you just have to understand that there's going to be people that disagree with you, but there's going to be a heck of a lot more people that are going to agree with you. And one of the things that I wish I would have done sooner, which I still struggle with, is I used to just do the funny voiceovers where, like, you would mock the words, or the your mouth to the words or whatever it was, and then you'd put something over it. Where now I'm trying to speak with my own words, just do a video. But when you do that, Kelly, you're being vulnerable. Like, I'm articulating my thoughts on the market. I'm articulating what I just experienced, and that opens you up for criticism. But at the end of the day, if you're not willing to be criticized, if you're not willing to have hard, thick skin, social media won't be for you, because you're going to constantly get in your own way. I don't look perfect enough. I'm not speaking clearly enough. Oh, you can hear my accent. Oh, I probably don't sound as smart as that person who's been doing it longer than me. And I get in my head about that every single time I post. But you want to know what? It's onward and upward. And if that leads to helping more people, and if that leads for more business for me, I'm going to take that chance and post.
It's always a risk, right? There's always a risk in being vulnerable. And I'll say this, one of the things I struggle so much with is the fact that there is not really a win for attractive, incredibly smart, talented women in the mortgage industry. Now, I realize that I'm saying that, but I have the reputation of saying the thing that you're not supposed to say. So I'm okay with owning it still. Yeah. But, it's strange, because you have the people who are like, oh, she's pretty. And then like, oh, you did a good job on this. But the thing about it is, you're also super talented and very, very smart. And what you bring to the table is so huge. And yet so often there's this judgment of I feel, and maybe you don't feel that, but I feel a little bit of judgment around that. I feel a little bit of, there's like a negativity sometimes about just trying your best.
Mm-hmm. I think that, if you show up, you can spend time on the way you look and still do a dang good job at what you do.
Yeah.
And I remember someone saying to me one time, would you rather work with the loan officer with spaghetti sauce on his shirt or the woman that shows up dressed well, put together well? Because I think that how you do one thing is how you do everything. Now, I would fight that a little bit because if you saw my laundry, you'd be like, ugh, she's terrible at mortgages if that's her laundry. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, it's like, I want to show up and give information, but I want to show up my best self. And if that means wearing makeup and doing my hair like I do, so be it. But I get so many comments on TikTok, not Instagram or LinkedIn, about, hey, how much makeup do you have on? Or gosh, how much plastic surgery did you do? None, by the way. But that comes with the territory. But you see these people with no username, no picture. It could be a bot. Does it get in my head? Not anymore. Because take it or leave it, it is what it is. But you will see that. And it makes people that, they'll say, oh, it's easier for you because you got really nice long hair and you can just show up and do that. Well, in reality, I don't want to show up and give great advice and then have someone just make a comment like, oh, the only reason she got likes is because of her hair. You know what I mean? Like there's
100%.
that, and that sucks, but that's life, I guess,
I guess it just is a harsh reality because like you look at, okay, let's take Ryan Grant as an example, right? Who I lovingly refer to as Ken doll. So here's Ken doll, and Ken doll's going to go make a video, and here's, sorry, but Barbie, and and she's going to make a video. The feedback loop is so different, right? The comments section is different and everything. And of course we live in that world, but it is one of the things that is interesting to me, as you mentioned, like, when you're somebody who really loves to be your best self, right? And to show up in a way that makes you happy, because like we didn't wake up this morning and do our hair for each other. You know what I mean? Like I did a little bit, but you know what I mean? Like we take pride in that. And yet sometimes I just feel like it's such a slippery slope that opens a door that it makes it hard to show up as our most vulnerable selves because we're second guessing what we should never have to second guess.
I know. And it goes both ways. Like we can feel just as hurt and criticized for people commenting about why would she, for example, dye her hair that blonde? This isn't my natural color. I will tell you that. Or on the other hand, it's like no one ever says they should put on some more makeup. Like it's very people think that how do I say it? Like I'm showing up how I feel I want to look my best and feel my best. So is someone else who might not be putting in effort. But we are the ones getting criticized constantly. And it's like, how is that fair? This is how I feel good. But it is a harsh reality, Kelly. And I don't know how people navigate around that. I think you just have to kind of block it out,
I started, I'll give you a little bit of background just about my journey in social media, just to give you what I think with this. Before anyone was on social media, right? Most people were following some sort of digital group, right? So I used to build digital groups, so digital, like online groups of human beings, tens of thousands of them, and get them to rally around like some sort of something, right? So that before social, I was in that sort of field of really being in social, being able to create conversations around things, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I was a weekly blogger for a parenting magazine here in Charlotte. And Charlotte was blowing up at the time. This is 20 years ago. And every week I would write this blog that was read by tens of thousands of people, right? And there's my little picture and all the things.
Yeah.
What I never really put together is the level of notoriety and the level of quasi-celebrity that would actually take place, where I would be standing at a Target and a random stranger would come up to me and go, "Hey, how's Josh's arm?" And I'm like, okay, this is really happening, right? And so it's funny how, we show up as, sort of these characters to people, right? People that they follow, I think sometimes overhumanize or dehumanize depending on how they feel, right? And it's hard to not, when you have somebody who has a big personality or who's not afraid to put themselves out there, it can cause some interesting reactions in the world.
It can. And I think that's what you have to remember is as you create your brand and as you let people into your life, again, even though they're not commenting or sharing on that, or like in your case, they're seeing this letter, but they're not necessarily, you don't know who's seeing it. it comes with people know a lot about you, and a lot of people might look up to you, and a lot of people are going to feel like they know you. And it's
Yeah.
very much like, you don't even have to get to know them. They can just love and like you, just like with us, with, people we know, like celebrities in a sense.
Yeah.
We'll use like Selling Sunset. You're like, oh, I love that girl. I can't stand that guy. Like, you get to know people, but you don't know them. But because of social media, you feel like you do. You really do.
We've called that in our sort of firm, we've referred to that for the last 15 years as digital intimacy, right? We
Yeah. Yeah.
truly feel as though, and there's great points to that, right? Like, if you're very busy, like in this industry we're super busy, but we're able to like keep tabs on people because we can very quickly kind of check in and see what they're doing. And even in our family we can do that, right? You can kind of, it helps us to kind of stay abreast as to what's going on. But I mean, as we all know, comparison is the thief of joy. And you're going to get positive and negative feedback from what you do. But I just so admire the fact that you really put yourself out there. And I don't know a lot of people who put themselves out there. And I can say that across the industry, right? There's people who are really good on camera, who speak to, lone things. There are people who are very comfortable making videos, all these things, but there's not a lot of people who are like, hey, I'm willing to show you kind of what the inside of my heart looks like. And you can take it or leave it, but like, here I am. And I'm unapologetic about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think people, they hear the word be authentic and they're like, oh, I have to be a certain way. In reality, just show up as yourself, whatever that is. And I get in my head though, Kelly, because I go to conferences. I get to know some of the best mortgage lenders, advisors, realtors in the nation. We get so connected with these incredible human beings, but then we follow them and we compare ourselves to them.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, I never compared myself to anybody on social media until I went to my first conference and I started seeing other lenders and what they're doing. And so, although that can make you feel like I'm not doing enough, it also is inspiring and makes me think, well, if they can do it, I can. And as long as you have this flip in your brain that can turn that off of like, don't use it as don't be jealous, use that as fuel to your fire, but
Right.
also know that you're doing enough. Like, you don't know, like, an hour ago, I had coffee with a couple of women in my industry who are realtors, and each of us cheered up at the table. And I tell you that because from the outside looking in, everything is going perfectly in their careers. And each of us had this moment of like tearing up about, are we doing enough? And are we being who we're supposed to be? And are we glowing from within and doing what we're meant to be doing? And that's all because we see each other from the outside. And so if you're on social and you're following people, like, you have to remember that you are doing enough. And even I have to tell myself that, Kelly, you know that. I get in my own head, but it just comes, it's just part of the territory of social media.
Yeah, it truly is, right? And you mentioned, there's people we so admire who are just killing the game. And no matter how confident you are in yourself and your skills or your vulnerability, we do live in a world where people doing well can make us feel less than, which is kind of silly because it should inspire. But of course it's going to impact us. And what I love about sort of this segue is, one of the things that you and I talked about, and I think is so fascinating because not a lot of people really talk about this, is the other side of recruiting. And we had a conversation earlier this week about that. And I would love just for you to share a little bit of insight because I think it kind of pairs really well with that. Because when you're recruited, especially when you're being recruited in retail, and look, you're a recruitable person. There's not, people would be crazy to not recruit you because you've got the heart, you've got the mind, you've got the willingness to lean in. You've got the package that people really think is just like perfect for retail. And I know that you are recruited often. But the other side of that can leave you feeling, and I'll let you speak for yourself, how can it sometimes mess with you?
I think when we talk about, this is a great segue, actually, by the way. I didn't expect that segue. That was great. I feel like everyone thinks that they have the best thing. They have the best company. They have the best HR team, the best products, the best everything. We can close quicker. We can pay you more. We can do this. And so what happens is right now, any lender with a pulse should be getting calls from recruiters.
Yeah.
But what happens is if you even have a conversation or you're like, you know what, they're a friend of mine, I want to hear them out, or yeah, I know that owner, yeah, I'll talk to you. You know, even if you open that door, you're opening yourself up to the ability to second guess everything that you're currently doing. And then once you hear a retail company out, then maybe you hear a broker out, for example, it's completely different. And then you get in your head and they're saying, oh, you should really at your bank, you should be doing this or not be doing this. And oh, you should never go to broker. You should never go to retail. You should. And at some point you're like, gosh, like, am I doing everything wrong? I'm not doing what I should be doing here. I shouldn't go there because those guys said not to, and I shouldn't go there. And it creates this confusion, and it creates like self-doubt. Like, oh gosh, like if those people say I should be working at that company, it is chaos, to be honest with you. And I'm sure there's other lenders that experience that as well. And if you're always, chasing shiny objects, or if you're always trying to like, well, I should, hear them out or them out, you got to focus on yourself first. Are you doing everything possible where you're at, what you're doing to succeed? Because it starts with you. You can't go over to that company and expect to succeed if you're not doing the things, the fundamentals, picking up the phone, dialing the database, whatever it is. And so I would say look within, and also just be aware that like if things are not working perfectly at your company, have a conversation. Maybe your company doesn't know. And so not that I'm trying to give advice, but that kind of is what goes through my head is when I see recruiters and your phone blows up and you don't even know who's calling you. It can be overwhelming, Kelly.
Oh, so I've been in the industry for 12 years, and I've never been a recruiter.
Yeah.
But I have, when I worked at the branch level at a regional level, right, I would be brought into sort of recruiting pitches. So I have been very aware of how we recruit in this industry, right? Or there's, especially with the tenacity that people recruit, right? So like you said, almost every loan officer I know is getting 2 to 3 calls a day. And you had mentioned, hey, I don't know sometimes, and I pick up my phone and I find myself, hearing this pitch, but feeling like, gosh, here's this great thing. Is this real?
Mm-hmm.
And then also like, am I missing things? Am I not doing things right? And all of a sudden you get stuck in this feedback loop in your own head that creates self-doubt about if you're in the right place or those kind of things. And I don't think that people talk about that nearly enough.
They don't. And it's funny to me because you got to think too, it all depends on the loan officer. Mm-hmm. Someone might be a perfect fit for their local community bank. Someone might be a perfect fit for someone that's offering all these tools and technology and resources here that wants to go hunt and find people. Some lenders just want to sit in their office and do deals. Some lenders just want to go do presentations all day and coach and teach and bring in the leads and have a team that does the apps for them. Like it really depends on the loan officer and their goals. And I think that a lot of people don't talk about it because they're afraid to, because people don't want it to be known that maybe they're being sought after or they're looking. But I also think that the mental like stability that comes with being recruited, it is the second guessing, like, wait, what? And that takes you away from what you should be doing. Do you know what I mean?
1,000%.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, we probably have never really talked a lot about recruiting. I'm actually really passionate about recruiting being done well. But one of the presentations I gave to a company who I was just kind of helping them out talking about recruiting. And I told them, I said, there are so many variables that you have to take into consideration when you're thinking about a person, right? Because you as Kayla, you're so much more than the avatar that they're going to pick up from social media or they're going to see through MMI data or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. You are not your production. You are not just a dog mom. You are not just a loan officer. It is about where you are in the country, okay? Because somebody in Fargo is not doing a loan the same way that they're doing it in Boston or Miami or Dallas, right? There is a very big, there should be more importance placed on where you are in the country, where you currently work, what the advantages are. And if I'm going to be sold a recruiting pitch, right? Somebody's going to come and recruit me right now. What I would genuinely want to hear from them is not how the grass is greener. I want to hear about my own lawn. I want you to tell me what you're literally going to do in the next 90 days that is going to be so profound for my career that I have no choice but to leave. But that's not the way we pitch it. We're like, look at the shiny.
Oh, I know. And it's like, hey, do you want to earn X amount of basis points? And it's a text message. I think I should go into recruiting because I'm like, I know what like hits people's hearts, and it's not a text and a call. It could be something like, hey, I noticed you're doing a really great job. I love your content. I see your potential. Hope you're doing well. It's not like these hard pitches that these recruiters do. I'm like, how did you get that job? Like, that's not attractive. One of the softwares that BombBomb, I use BombBomb. I had thought about using it for years. Somebody from BombBomb sent me a video and it was like, Kayla, I love what you're doing. I work at BombBomb. Listen, if you, I have a 15-minute segment that I book with people. If you just want to chat about it for 15 minutes, let me know. And it was a video.
Yep.
And I thought about that. And although that's not recruiting for mortgage, I thought about it and I'm like, that was more, that hit me more. Her talking about me and how she's like, you could do this. And 15 minutes is all I need. That sold me, because these recruiters will be like, could I get, when do you have 2 hours of your time? And you don't even know the person. And I'm like, does that really work? Like, how?
But I think I think it's our approach to sales that makes us so different than other people, right? So in general, right, exactly the point, right? You're on LinkedIn, your entire inbox is full of these people who are now paying to get connected to people and send a spam message right away. So we've learned to just opt out of even looking at those unless it's something like huge. But that's kind of that same philosophy, right? I'm going to recruit. And so I'm going to email, call, all these things. Whereas what would actually work for me is someone doing exactly that. If I sent you an email or a video and I was like, hey, I'm going to tell you this. You don't know me from Adam. And I totally get that. And you get hit up by recruiters all the time. So here's what I'm going to tell you that's true. One, I know who you are. I know where you are. And I see the job you're doing. I appreciate you for those things. I don't want to be somebody who's blowing you up. I want to be somebody who you think is a really good person to talk to about the future of your career. You know what I mean?
We could just open up a recruiting company, Kelly. What are we doing? I'm just saying.
Recruiting. We could just recruit for everyone. Honestly, depending on who you ask, I've been a good recruiter in the past. It just, it just depends on who you ask. But I really appreciate, by the way, always your honesty, right? Because I think that is one of the things we get most nervous about in the industry. Yeah. Right? Don't say a thing about the thing, and or people won't like it, and of course I follow that every day.
Yeah,
never not one time. Yeah. But I just feel like I could be like everybody else. I could say, I could be like, everything's great and the sun will come out tomorrow, or I could just say, hey, this is a real thing, and we could really just talk about it.
Well, and I'm glad you bring it up, because I've been on podcasts and no one's ever asked that or talked about it. And I think back to Ryan Grant when he talked about like the mental health of mortgage lenders when I saw him at Momentum Builder. And I remember thinking, I'm like, why aren't we talking about this more? Because we're constantly, as lenders, being told, you need more technology. You need to do this. You need to have better this. You need to be in front of your people. You need to be doing this. And are you talking to realtors? Are you talking to financial advisors? Are you talking to attorneys? And we get all these ideas at these conferences and like, I'm going to go back and crush it. And then at one point, and this kind of relates to recruiting a little bit, it's like, gosh, like, can someone just talk about how we're doing mentally? And that's where, when you talk about recruiting, Kelly, it's like, yeah, you get in your head because people are saying you shouldn't be doing that. The recruiters that are not doing it the right way are like, oh, you got to come work for me. You're leaving money on the table. And it creates self-doubt. Right. And I'm glad you brought it up, because hopefully maybe someone listening can be like, wow, I feel the same. Like, it's real.
I think a tremendous amount of people would feel exactly the same way. And I think if we start kind of talking about it, I don't know that it changes the way that recruiting kind of is in this industry. I'm very much on record as stating completely against the way that recruiting is done in this industry, but only because I think that there's better ways. And I think we need to be open to thinking about things from the top down in mortgage in a different way, right? Because what worked before may not work. And what works with men may not work with women. And what works in Fargo may not work in Charlotte. And so we have to really kind of have some ownership in the way that we cause other people to feel. And I don't think that that's something that people are putting, top of mind when they're having conversations, because it's very often that hook is where you are is wrong and here is right. And you're making a mistake.
It's kind of like if you're in a relationship, if you're married and you are never present and you are never supporting your spouse and you're like, oh, I'm just going to get divorced. And you go to the next relationship and then you're like, well, like they do this and this. But if you're not putting in the work and if you're not focusing on what's best for you, that's not going to work. The next one's not going to work. And that's where I think people just get lost, is you need to focus on you and your goals and what you want in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years, and figure it out. And at the end of the day, that company is going to be great for one person, but this company is going to be great for you. And you got to focus from within first.
I couldn't agree more. It's so well said. Well, listen, you and I met. I don't think people would probably even believe us if we told them like we've known each other less than a year, right?
Yeah.
And I walked up to you at Momentum Builder because I recognized you, and I was, because we had talked a little bit on LinkedIn, and then I walked up to you, and you were just so gracious and so so excited, and that was really the thing that has always stuck with me about you, is you just bring such a positive energy, and as I see you at conferences, and as I know you as a friend, obviously, and as I think about your future, I see so many amazing things for you. But I would love to know, when you look at your future, how do you see the future of Kayla?
It's funny, I can give advice really great. Like, think about your future, think about what you want. But I think I still struggle with that. I think sometimes opportunities come that you didn't expect would even be an opportunity. And I feel like that might be something for me. Kelly, I don't know what it could be. I mean, we think about the book that we were part of. I never once thought I would be an author of a mortgage book, but opportunities come. I would say that after attending conferences and being around people like you who just inspire me, and like this community, and it's like a reunion and friends, there's part of me that wonders if there will be a future of some type of coaching or speaking or something maybe I'm not even aware of today. But in the meantime, focusing on, again, what am I doing today in my current role where I can grow? And that's building a team calendar mortgage team. That is creating standards, creating expectations to educate and empower clients so that they have a really amazing experience during probably one of the most stressful times in their lives. So my goals in even the next year are to build team calendar, to impact way more people. I want to double my production and double the amount of people I touch, but again, with the right team in place. And then from there, I really don't know what's going to happen, but I'm just being very open. I'm taking opportunities to be on podcasts like this. I'm doing webinars. I'm doing my own podcast. I'm really trying to I don't want to say yes to everything. Like, that's not what I'm saying, but saying yes to the right opportunities, because you never know how one conversation could lead to something else. So the future is unknown, but I feel in my heart that there's maybe something else out there in addition to mortgage, whether it's part of mortgage or maybe after mortgage. I'm not sure. Do you have any thoughts on maybe what it could be, Kelly?
No, I just so believe in the same thing, right? That opportunity will come when you put when you put the effort into who you show up as and how you show up and the good that you do for others. Opportunity will come. And being open to that opportunity, or open to, look, the people who are on stages at those conferences, right? At one point or another, they sat in the same seat saying, gosh, I wonder if I will ever be one of the people on the stage, but I fully believe you will be one of the people on the stage. And just, as we wrap up, I'm so honored to be your friend. I'm so super proud of you. It has been, you're one of my favorite parts about this year and getting to know you better. So we're friends.
Oh, I love that. Because at the end of the day, we said yes to an opportunity to do something together. And the first night I met you, we were sharing an Airbnb together. Or, well, the second time I met you, technically.
But it's really true. Like all of a sudden we're roommates. We now live together. Hey, let's shake hands. Now we live together. So this is insane. I love it. All right, friend. Thank you so much for spending some time today. Everybody, if you are not connected with Kayla on LinkedIn, I'm not really sure what you're doing, but you can find her. She's super easy to find. She also has a great podcast. Again, tell me what it's called again.
It's Real.
It's Real. And who's your co-host for that?
Andrew Yagi, a realtor in Fergus Falls, Minnesota, who I met at orientation my first day at NDSU.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, so find Kayla and just really connect with her. If for no other reason, then she is going to inspire you every day the same way that she inspires me.
God, Kelly, I love you.
I love you, friend. Thanks so much for being on the podcast.